Thank you for joining me today at A Touch of Blue Studio with Drawing with Grandma. Welcome back to my studio. Today we're going to continue our sketchbook studies. I started this illustration board of this theme drawing last week, and you may want to go back and watch the sketch of this squirrel that we did, and we're going to continue this study board with related items to this squirrel. So I'm going to sketch out a leaf, and then we're going to place an acorn down below and just practice some of the unique shapes that are related to some other objects in nature. So in order to place a leaf, you can trace around it like I've done in other lessons and then work on the details. But you want to start with that center line of the leaf and then build the symmetry of the leaf shapes on the sides. But we're going to come back to that and get this acorn sketched. And I always love to look at the biggest shapes first of the whole subject. So I'm going to begin by doing some placement marks there at the top, and then the oval for the top of the acorn shape, and then the body of the acorn is another oval within that. You can see that it helps when you're doing a symmetrical shape to create a line down the middle, and that helps to kind of make sure that you are shaping them correctly on both sides. This object isn't perfectly symmetrical, but we want to have it, resemble one side to the other. So after you have those basic placement marks put in and your oval shape and the broader sketch marks, then you can go in and observe the actual acorn that you're studying and find its very unique shape. So I'm working on those sides of that top, and now I want to place the bottom and make sure I have the cylinders right from the perspective I'm looking at, and then to have it look round by placing those lines down the middle and within the framework of that shape. So I always like to use a blender to kind of help me place in the shadow shapes of objects. The light's coming from the top right. It's not real strong, it's subtle, but it's evident. So I'm going to now work in some line work and build in the form, which is the three-dimensional illusion of a shape. So now that we have some value and shades blocked into both shapes, we're going to begin taking them a little further and using a little bit more strategy with our pencil marks to create some textures and line variations that will help with the illusion of the particular surface that this is. So we'll begin to build those, and then we'll think of some other items to put on this study board. It's important to look at the texture of the object you're drawing and try to practice developing that texture that is unique to that object and using your pencil to do that. I've mentioned before that I don't like to outline the objects with a strong dominant line, but using value and form in order to create the illusion. The edges should be soft in order for it to look three-dimensional. There's a lot of little bumps on the top of this acorn, and they're organized. So it helps me to use some a more of a systematic way to place them. So I've added those cylinders, or ellipses, I should say. Now we're going to just place the shadow, and then we'll come back to both of these objects and continue them. So let's continue on this illustration board with our study of the nature items. I decided to go ahead and do another squirrel. This will be just his head, and it'll be a good opportunity for you to see it from beginning to the end of developing the shape and the form and then the pencil techniques. So I'm putting some placement marks of where I want the head placed, and that is just a really helpful beginning stage, is to kind of mark it out. And then I built the oval, which is unique to the position of the head, so you have to study the reference to get the tilt of that oval for the overall structure. Now I want to find the center line that is usually right where the eyes and the bridge of the nose meet, and that cross section helps to place the eyes. So we are looking at the side view, but even developing that cross section helps to kind of place it accurately. Then I go straight out from the top of the eye at the angle of that center line to find the placement of the ear. Now within that oval that I built, I'm going to create the unique shape of the head now. So the oval is just a beginning structure, and now I carve into that oval and I adjust it for the particular shape that I'm looking at. I have the eye placed. It's a very dominant part of the drawing, so I want to be sure that I get the shape formed before I do anything else substantial in the drawing. So I think it's positioned correctly. The angle of the eye is positioned, and now I need to do the nose, the mouth placement, and the dominant cheek, which really helps to identify this as a squirrel. I think I'm getting the basic structure. I think the only other part I want to put in is this shoulder, which is also another oval, and then the two little paws that are coming up near his chin and the arm. So that will just help to give the illusion that this is a squirrel. It'll help be an identifier. And now that the eye is correct, I'm going to go ahead and lay that in with the shading that I'm seeing with the dark and light tones within the fur. There's a really nice light patch on the bottom section under his eye. Everything is uniquely patterned and shaped with these fur designs, so it's really important to study it. So everything I'm doing now is pushing my pencil darker and lighter whenever I see a variation in tone. But the first stage in shading is to lay in a nice foundation of dark and light ranges of value, which is called the value structure of a drawing. Then I will come back with my blender, smooth it out, and create a softness before I go to the details. I'm using a very dark pencil now, and this 4B is dark enough for me to establish the very deepest shadows and darkest parts of the hair. The light is coming from the top left, so I want that forehead and the top of the head to be lighter in value. So I switch out from my 4B to a H pencil, which for me is good enough for now. Now and then I will go in with my blender and just smooth some lines out and to have them interact a little bit. And then on top we'll do some final details. So you see that I've shaped the claws now. The paws are interacting a little bit. There's strong hair there, and I want to be sure that I erase out any outlines that I did, because I don't want, lines that confuse the drawing. So I want everything to be done with shading and value and not harsh lines. So now I'm using the darker tones to kind of establish the three-dimensional shape of the arm and the shoulder. And you can see that I'm moving in the same direction and in a pattern to create that illusion of the hair just laying on top of one another, and creates just a beautiful structure for his fur. A little bit of blending, a little bit of tone. And then we will go back with some of the edges where we need just some hair and some whiskers, just little subtle marks that help to, again, just create aspects of the drawing that will help identify him as a squirrel. Making that dark line down the center, even if it isn't in the resource that you're looking at, it helps on a drawing to emphasize the anatomical structure of a head with that center. So I wanted to accentuate that line down the center and in between his eyes. We don't see that left eye, so having that nice cross section will help to give the illusion of it being there anyway. We want to focus on some detail. There are a lot of dark colors within his browns that we want to emphasize. There's little hairs, little details, without losing the quality and softness of the drawing. Erasing out some highlights. Okay, well, here he is, our little study of the head of a squirrel to go on our illustration board with our other squirrel, the leaf, and the acorn. And we'll add to this drawing again next week. Thank you so much for joining me today at A Touch of Blue Studio with Drawing and Painting with Grandma.